Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Friday, September 21st, 2018. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. What you notice here is that price has had a pretty nice squeeze here recently. We've gotten another rotation higher. This was a great failed new low and a great squeeze to new highs. And now price is sitting up here at these highs, kind of trading back below the previous session's close and high. And in typical cases, you'd see a rotation at least back to the midpoint of the previous session's range, or even as low as the breakout point. But overall, bulls need to keep that area bid, 29.20, as we mentioned yesterday, for a shot at continuing higher. The upside target that we've been focusing on in the ES to begin the month on the pullback here was looking for a squeeze into 29.65 to 29.80 and as high as 3,000, but that was the general zone there, and even as low as the 29.50s. But overall, we've seen a nice squeeze. However, this type of behavior right now suggests that we could have a counter trend morning in effect. Bulls need to be able to defend that pullback as deep as 29.20 for a shot at continuing higher into the end of the month and into the end of the quarter. Let's take a look here at the NQ. Now the NQ has gotten a bit of a squeeze here in the previous session. Didn't really get participation from some of its well-known contributors like Apple or Amazon. They were up, but weren't really showing strength like what we saw in the NQ yesterday. And right now you can see again showing a little bit of weakness right in the zone where we saw weakness before. Again, that could provide another shakeout opportunity where this thing pulls back ahead of what could be an explosive October. Right now what you see is that we have had a sideways month based off of this range here being wide, and right here we have a very narrow pivot range for the upcoming month, and it's also inside the previous month's range, or forecasted to be inside. That is what I call an inside value. That's straight from my book, Secrets of a Pivot Boss, and that usually suggests major expansion one way or another. Doesn't all have to be directional, but because of the overall uptrending market, the likelihood of it breaking higher is very high. And so again, we'll continue to watch this, but right now at this point, if there's any failure again to hold 7,600, that could lead to a deep little pullback again back toward 75. But I would expect bulls to defend again for a shot at continuing this thing into higher into the month of October. Let's take a look here at crude oil. Crude oil is showing strength. The previous session, after a major expansion day, breakout trend day up, that stop run day was then followed by a counter trend move back toward the midpoint. The retest after stop run was very successful, and price is now bounced higher up today about 0.85%. Overall, this market has had a higher kind of slope to it, with the ascending kind of qualities to the lower edge of this range. The upper edge has been very flat and horizontal here, and usually that type of behavior suggests an upside move. Right now, the fact that price was able to close above the 70.50 2 days ago was very bullish. The fact that price was able to hold the return into 70 is very bullish, and now the bounce again suggests strength. And so overall, we could see a solid continuation through the 71.50s down the road. It may not happen today, but this holding 70 suggests that we, in the next few days here, we could see a very significant upside move. And so we'll continue to watch to see how those levels hold. But overall, 70 is bid. If at any point here we see price go offered through 70, that could open up more of a return back towards, say, 67s. But right now, as long as that level holds, there's a shot to see an up squeeze right there. All right, let's take a look at really quickly here the YM. The YM has gone vertical. We've seen it in some of these charts here where we've had tech kind of lag and pull back, and we've had blue chips really squeeze. We had the S&P 500 stock squeeze, and those have been very, very powerful, very solid squeezes. So again, that would suggest more upside. So all of this behavior right here squeezed like what we were expecting, but each one had its own degree. This one probably led the pack higher. Overall, any pullback, even as deep again as that 26,250, could still be a buying opportunity for continuation higher into October. Again, typically speaking, when you have a higher value relationship, you won't normally go back below the midpoint. That's 26,290. So I would think that we either hold up here heading into next week's trading, and then we perhaps pull back in October and try again, just like we did this month and just like we did the month prior. And again, this is the key level. It's the 26,250. Any failure to hold there would open up more weakness, but we could rotate into that zone followed by a continuation. So the YM continues to be very strong. The one thing I would caution right now with the YM is we have now reached the upper end of the large impulse sell-off. So here's the impulse key range there where price rallied and sold off significantly until it hit this low, bounced back to the mid, and gave us our key range boundaries. This entire time we've been looking at buying down here, first shot at returning here, and eventually returning to the highs. We've now reached those highs over the last 2 days. Top end of the range is 26,684. Again, like the ES, we can trade around here, but if we fail at any point, the failure point would bring you back to this key range level and then perhaps as low as the midpoint with a shot of going all the way down to the lower edge, theoretically speaking. This is not a typical impulse key range, so I wouldn't think that we'd go way down here, but theoretically speaking, it's still in the cards. But anytime you are at an edge, my favorite play is to watch for rejection, because if there's any signs of significant rejection, there could be a pullback of some magnitude that could be pretty significant here in the near term, as low as 25,785 on a very short-term basis. So again, keep an eye on that 26,684. Again, we can trade up here for a while before rejection occurs, but if a rejection were to occur, it could be rather significant. Lastly, let's take a look at Bitcoin. We've been talking about perhaps a bounce into 7K could be ahead. I mentioned here lately that we had this little bit of a rejection tail here. 6K continues to hold, while there is some significant downward slope on the upper end of the range, these lower highs. That doesn't mean that we couldn't see a bounce, and so I mentioned that there could be a bounce back toward the previous month's close around 7K, maybe even a little bit higher, but for the most part I wouldn't overshoot this. And so this is seeing a pretty solid little bounce right now, up 5% today. The breakout point here at the previous highs, that's the level to defend for continuation higher. So 65s, 80s, you know, that zone right there again needs to continue to hold for a bounce into 7. Overall, you can see the declining highs here. You see the flat bottom. That's usually indicative of weakness to come, like a flush may need to happen. And so again, being cautious here on this next rotation. Every time I've called a target, I've called lower highs, and it's reached those targets, except for this one. It came just shy of reaching 8K, and now 7K is right around the corner again. It doesn't have much more room to run. Something's got to give soon, and it either has to really show that it can burst higher, and that could start a phase back towards, say, 11 or as high as 12K, or it needs to flush, and that would take you down toward about 20, as low as the 2000s, but I mean 4,400 right away. 4,400 is the next major target, and then 2,100 would be the 100% forecasted target from the initial key range from when the futures contract came online. So 2,100 would be that lower target. So those are real targets down here, and those could be targets if this thing doesn't see expansion soon. Again, it has to prove that it can push above a prior pivot high, and right now it's at the support level that's been defended for many, many months. So again, Very, very important level here to watch moving forward. All right, that is it for now. Let's see how this plays out heading into the weekend. Good luck, trade well, and happy Friday.